Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. Some betrayals don't come with knives. They come with smiles, compliments, and people who swear they'd never hurt you. Before we get into this topic, you need to understand something that most people never want to admit. If you truly saw what certain people said, planned, or celebrated behind your back, you wouldn't just walk away. You'd block them with the same speed you close your phone when your battery hits 1%. And that's not drama, that's psychology. Studies show that nearly 60% of people underestimate how others truly feel about them, and the gap between public behavior and private motives is often far wider than we think. Behind every "I got your back" is sometimes a whole group chat where your name is the punchline, the topic, and the entertainment all in one. What makes this topic hit even harder is that the people you'd block without thinking twice aren't strangers or side characters. They're people who acted like they were part of your inner circle. The ones who clapped for you in public but quietly prayed your next step wouldn't take you too far. The ones who gave advice with one hand and stirred trouble with the other. The ones who smiled so perfectly you could swear they practiced it in the mirror before meeting you. A sprinkle of humor? Sure, but let's be honest. Some of these people didn't just have two faces. They had Wi-Fi connected masks that updated depending on who walked into the room. This introduction isn't here to make you suspicious, it's here to make you aware. Because once you understand the truth of this topic, it becomes painfully clear. You were not overreacting. Your spirit was simply ahead of the evidence. Your intuition felt what your eyes weren't allowed to see yet. And when the truth finally reveals itself, it hits with the kind of clarity that makes you want to block someone on every app, platform, device, and maybe even spiritually, just to be safe. So let's go deeper, because if you knew what they did, what they said, and what they wished, you'd block them everywhere, like your peace depends on it, because it does. Number one, they studied your weaknesses like a manual, not like a friend. Some people didn't get to know you because they cared. They got to know you because they wanted to understand how to use you. Every laugh you forced, every moment you hesitated, every time you showed vulnerability, they filed it away like notes in a textbook. Your reactions, your triggers, even the little things you considered private, they observed them with the patience of someone running an experiment. They memorized your patterns not to appreciate you, but to predict how you would respond in situations where they could gain control or advantage. They were not interested in friendship or loyalty. They were interested in leverage. The terrifying part is how subtle it was. They didn't walk in like villains. They came in soft, smiling, supportive, pretending to care. But behind every encouraging word was a quiet calculation. They would test boundaries, poke at insecurities, and note the results. The things that made you uncomfortable, the moments that shook your confidence, the times you second-guessed yourself, they made mental checklists. And once they had enough information, they could manipulate situations, twist conversations, or even gaslight you with surgical precision. It's a form of emotional reconnaissance that leaves you feeling blindsided, because the person who seemed closest to you knew the most dangerous things about your inner self. What makes this even more intense is that they did it silently. You never realized it while it was happening. They didn't leave fingerprints, they left impressions. And now, looking back, it's obvious. The jokes that cut a little too close to the bone, the advice that subtly undermined your decisions, the moments where they coincidentally brought up your insecurities at exactly the wrong time. It wasn't accidental, it was calculated. If you truly understood how meticulously they studied every weakness, every hesitation, every flaw you thought was hidden, you wouldn't think twice about removing them from your life. You would recognize that closeness was never real. It was a cover. They didn't see your soul, they saw data. And once you see people like that for what they really are, there's no room for forgiveness, hesitation, or nostalgia. The only option is to block, cut off, and protect your energy like it's the most valuable asset you've got, because it is. Number two, They rehearsed apologies they never meant because they knew you believed in potential. Some people aren't sorry because they feel regret. They're sorry because they know how to use your heart against you. They've watched you forgive. They've noticed how you believe in growth, in second chances, in the better side of people. And they exploit it. They don't stumble into apologies. They plan them. They know exactly how long to wait, the perfect tone to strike, the precise words that will make you believe they've changed. Every tear, every pause, every heartfelt "I'm sorry" is carefully choreographed to reset your trust without altering their behavior. The moment they slip up again, it's not a mistake. It's part of a cycle they've engineered to keep you within reach, vulnerable and hopeful. The manipulation is subtle, but devastating. They watch the way you respond to regret, how quickly you forgive when sincerity is presented, even superficially. They learn which words make you soften, which gestures make you lower your guard, and which explanations will keep you invested in the relationship. Every apology becomes a tool, a mask that hides intent while maintaining influence over your decisions. They don't want you to forget the harm. They want you to normalize it, to believe that mistakes are forgivable as long as they say the right words at the right time. What makes this even more chilling is how convincing it can be. They mirror your emotions, they echo your values, and they act like they're evolving while secretly remaining the same. The cycle feeds itself. You forgive because you believe in the person. They repeat the behavior because they know forgiveness is a resource you provide. And you're left wondering how someone so close could betray trust repeatedly while appearing so repentant. Once you recognize that their apologies were rehearsed, that their sincerity was manufactured, it becomes clear that every "I'm sorry" was designed to manipulate. They weren't growing, they were calculating. And once the truth hits, there's no reason to linger in a space built on lies disguised as growth. The only choice is to protect yourself, cut ties, and remove them from your life entirely, because believing in someone's potential doesn't obligate you to endure intentional harm. Number 3, they talked about you with people who were waiting for you to fail. Some people don't just betray you quietly, they actively broadcast your life to those who are hoping to see you stumble. Behind the smiles, behind the casual conversations, there's a network of ears and eyes all waiting for the moment you falter. They share details of your struggles, your decisions, your fears, and your small mistakes like they're trading currency, as if your life is a performance they can comment on from the sidelines. And the worst part is that they do it while pretending loyalty, while pretending to be part of your team. The ones you trusted most are the very ones who set the stage for others to watch you fall. It's not harmless gossip. It's strategy. They know exactly which words to choose, which stories to exaggerate, and who to involve to maximize the impact of your vulnerabilities. Every misstep you make becomes entertainment. Every moment of doubt is dissected in private, turned into judgment, and shared with people who are eager to see your confidence crumble. They don't just talk. They orchestrate a web where your life becomes a spectacle for those who don't wish you well. What makes it even more dangerous is how they disguise it. They speak as though they're seeking advice, expressing concern, or casually sharing. But beneath every sentence is a calculation, a desire to amplify your struggles in the minds of others. The more they talk, the more people are subtly coached to expect your failure. And because these conversations are hidden, you never know how many people are silently rooting against you while pretending to celebrate your wins. Once you understand this, it's impossible to see the world the same way. The closeness you once felt, the trust you once gave, was never really theirs to honor. It was a tool they wielded to build a crowd of spectators waiting for your downfall. Recognizing this kind of betrayal is jarring, but it's liberating. Once you see the truth, you realize you don't need these people in your life at all. They were never supporters, they were spectators, and the sooner you block them out completely, the sooner you reclaim your peace and your power. Number 4, they treated your kindness as a loophole, not a virtue. Some people don't see kindness as a quality, they see it as an opportunity. Your generosity, patience, and willingness to forgive weren't appreciated. They were exploited. Every time you extended yourself, every time you gave someone the benefit of the doubt, they marked it down as a permission slip for their behavior. Your boundaries, empathy, and understanding were not signals of respect. They were signals of convenience. They didn't see your heart, they saw access. And the more you trusted, the more space they felt to take. The danger in this kind of dynamic is how invisible it feels while it's happening. You think you're giving, you think you're helping, and maybe even feeling proud of your compassion. Meanwhile, they are calculating how far they can push before you push back, testing your patience and noting the limits of your forgiveness. They watch your tolerance like a scientist watching a chemical reaction, looking for the exact moment they can take advantage without causing an outright explosion. Every act of kindness becomes a loophole they exploit, a door that stays open just long enough for them to manipulate your energy, your time, and your peace. It's subtle and it's slow. One small misuse becomes another, and soon the pattern is undeniable. The person you considered a friend or ally begins to operate under the assumption that your heart has no boundary strong enough to stop them. Your concern for others is treated as an invitation for intrusion, your patience as a license to cross lines, and your forgiveness as a guarantee of future tolerance. Once you recognize this, it hits like a revelation. What you thought was mutual respect was never intended to be mutual at all. Your kindness is a gift, not a contract, and the people who abuse it are not worth a second thought. Protecting yourself doesn't make you unkind, it makes you wise. And when you finally block them, cut them off, or step away, it isn't revenge. It's reclaiming the energy, peace, and respect that was never theirs to exploit in the first place. Number 5, they envied you so deeply that even your smallest wins felt like personal attacks. Some people don't just dislike your success, they feel threatened by it even when it's tiny. Every accomplishment, every small victory, every moment where you rise even slightly above the status quo becomes a mirror reflecting their own insecurities. They don't celebrate you, they resent you quietly, turning your growth into a personal affront. That promotion you got, that compliment you received, that goal you achieved. They interpret all of it as evidence of what they lack, and suddenly your progress feels like a challenge, a provocation, and a competition, even if you never intended it to be. This envy isn't loud or obvious at first. They'll smile, nod, and say the right things. But behind that politeness, there's a simmering comparison, a silent tally of every time they think you've outpaced them. They watch your achievements with a mix of fascination and irritation, silently asking, why them and not me? Why now? Even your smallest wins, the ones that barely touch the surface of the world, feel to them like personal attacks, as if you somehow took something that was theirs by right. And because it's internalized, it's much harder to spot. It seeps into their tone, their expressions, and their actions in ways that make your growth feel uncomfortable for them and tense for you. What makes this especially dangerous is how subtly it manipulates your interactions. They may offer advice, but it's often laced with resentment. They may encourage you, but their words can carry judgment or belittlement. Every interaction becomes a chess game where your wins are scrutinized, criticized, or minimized, not celebrated. The more you thrive, the more pressure they feel to regain control of the narrative, often at your expense. Recognizing this kind of envy is liberating. Once you see that their reactions aren't about you, they're about their insecurity, you no longer need to carry their judgments or bend your life to ease their discomfort. Their resentment isn't your problem, it's theirs. And when you remove these toxic influences from your space, you're not being petty. You're preserving your joy, protecting your growth, and making it impossible for someone else's jealousy to sabotage the life you're building. Number 6, they tested how far they could disrespect you and still be welcomed back. Some people don't just disrespect you by accident. They do it deliberately, and they do it in increments to see exactly how much they can get away with. It starts small, a comment that stings a little, a boundary they push without asking, a promise they break and expect you to shrug off. Each act is like a tiny probe, measuring your tolerance, seeing how far they can bend the rules without breaking the connection. They watch your reactions closely, noting how quickly you forgive, how much you rationalize, and how often you give them the benefit of the doubt. Every time you let them slide, they raise the bar, testing new limits, and slowly, methodically, they train you to accept more than you ever should. The scary part is how calculated it feels in hindsight. What once seemed like carelessness or a one-time mistake is actually a pattern, a strategy. They are not learning from their actions. They are learning from yours. They track your patience, your empathy, and your hesitation to confront conflict. They know which words will get a defensive response, which actions you'll excuse, and which boundaries you'll let slide because you hope to preserve peace. They turn your kindness and your desire to maintain harmony into tools for their advantage, using your own character against you to see just how far they can go before consequences appear. This behavior leaves you drained, second-guessing yourself, and wondering why you feel constantly tested. The truth is, they have been testing you all along, and it isn't about you. It's about control. They want to see exactly how much they can take without losing access to your energy, your attention, and your approval. Once you realize this, the pattern becomes undeniable. They weren't careless or clumsy. They were strategic and purposeful. Understanding this is liberating because it gives you clarity. When you see that their mistakes were experiments in manipulation, you stop rationalizing, stop excusing, and stop giving them second chances. The only way to reclaim your peace is to remove them completely, cut them off, and refuse to allow anyone else to test how much they can disrespect you again. You protect your energy, your boundaries, and your sanity, and that's the ultimate power. Number 7, they protected their image more than they ever protected your feelings. Some people are so obsessed with how they appear that your feelings are never a priority. Your hurt, your trust, your boundaries, they don't matter nearly as much as the way they look to the world. When conflict arises or mistakes happen, their first instinct is to preserve their reputation, not to make things right with you. They will twist the story, shift blame, and act innocent, all to make sure no one questions them. Meanwhile, you're left with the emotional fallout, wondering why the person closest to you seems completely unconcerned with the impact of their actions. The manipulation is subtle but intentional. They know that if they maintain the right facade, most people won't dig deeper, and they can continue operating without accountability. They may apologize, but the apology is crafted to protect their image more than to acknowledge your pain. They may say the right words, but the timing and tone are calculated so that others see them as the good person, while your reality of hurt remains invisible. The priority is never repairing what was broken. It's ensuring they still look untouchable. This obsession with image over integrity makes it nearly impossible to confront them in a meaningful way. Any attempt to address your feelings can be redirected or dismissed as overreaction, dramatization, or misunderstanding. They are masters at redirecting attention to themselves, their version of the story, and their perceived innocence, all while your emotions are minimized or invalidated. Every interaction becomes a performance where your perspective is secondary and their public image is the main event. Recognizing this pattern is empowering because it clarifies the truth. They were never invested in your well-being. They were invested in the narrative they control. Understanding this frees you from the expectation that they should care, apologize sincerely, or make amends. Once you see how deeply calculated this behavior is, it becomes easy to remove them from your life. You stop rationalizing, stop justifying, and stop hoping for genuine concern. Protecting yourself means cutting off anyone who prioritizes perception over your reality, because peace and respect cannot coexist with someone whose main goal is looking good while your feelings are dismissed. Number 8. They only loved the version of you they could control. Some people don't love you for who you are. They love the version of you that fits into their comfort zone. They admire the parts of you that are predictable, compliant, and dependent, the sides of yourself that don't challenge them or disrupt their narrative. The moment you evolve, grow, or assert yourself, their affection shifts. Suddenly the admiration, the support, the connection, they vanish. They never loved the real you. They loved the version of you they could shape, manipulate, and influence to serve their own sense of control. This isn't always obvious at first. They start small, gently nudging your decisions, subtly shaping your behavior, praising you only when you act according to their expectations. Their approval is conditional, and over time, it becomes clear that your value to them exists only as long as you stay within the boundaries they've defined. When you begin to break free, when your self-respect, independence, or ambition starts to grow, they feel threatened. The affection they once displayed transforms into criticism, detachment, or outright hostility. Your growth exposes the truth. Their love was never unconditional. It was transactional, a means of keeping you in a box where they could feel safe and in control. What makes this kind of manipulation especially dangerous is how it erodes your confidence without you noticing. You may start questioning your own worth, wondering why the person you cared about suddenly became distant or cold. But the problem isn't you. It's that they cannot handle your evolution. They fear a version of you that doesn't require validation, obedience, or permission from them. Your strength, independence, and self-awareness make them uncomfortable, so they withdraw, punish, or manipulate to regain control. Recognizing this truth is liberating. Once you see that their affection was conditional and controlling, there's no reason to stay. You don't owe your energy to someone who only loves you when you're moldable. True connection comes from people who celebrate your growth, who honor your independence, and who love you exactly as you are. Cutting off those who only valued control isn't cruelty. It's self-respect, protection, and finally giving yourself the space to thrive free from manipulation. Number 9, they celebrated your confusion because it kept you predictable. Some people don't just take advantage of your kindness or weaknesses. They thrive when you're unsure of yourself. Your uncertainty, hesitation, and self-doubt aren't inconveniences to them. They are tools. They know that a person who questions themselves constantly is easier to influence, easier to predict, and easier to manipulate. Every time you second-guess your decisions, every time you waver on your convictions, they see it as a victory. Not because they're malicious in an obvious way, but because your confusion makes their control over you smoother and more reliable. The insidious part of this is how subtle it can feel. They don't openly rejoice in your struggles. They might smile, nod, and act supportive, pretending to help you find clarity while quietly enjoying the fact that you remain uncertain. They might offer advice that seems helpful, but in reality, it keeps you trapped in indecision, always questioning yourself and always seeking their guidance. They celebrate your hesitation because it allows them to remain the constant in your life, the one you rely on, the one you turn to because no one else understands your confusion like they do. What makes this even more toxic is how it undermines your confidence without you noticing immediately. Over time, you start to feel dependent, constantly checking your instincts, your choices, and your judgments, and you may even believe you need their approval to feel validated. Every step you take feels tentative, and that tentativeness is exactly what they wanted. They don't need to push you down directly. Keeping you unsure achieves the same result without ever appearing aggressive or controlling. Once you recognize this, it's both infuriating and freeing. The person who celebrated your confusion wasn't helping. They were exploiting your vulnerability. And the moment you step back and stop allowing your uncertainty to be a playground for someone else, you regain control over your life. Removing these people isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming clarity, confidence, and freedom, and finally refusing to be predictable for anyone's benefit other than your own. Number 10. They exaggerated their pain to overshadow yours. Some people don't just hurt you. They manipulate your emotions by making their struggles louder than yours. Whenever you're going through something, instead of offering genuine support or simply being present, they turn the spotlight onto themselves. Your pain becomes a backdrop to their story, your struggles a supporting role in their performance. They exaggerate, dramatize, and magnify their own issues, making it almost impossible for anyone, including you, to focus on what you're actually experiencing. And because of their ability to manipulate attention, suddenly your feelings seem smaller, your hurt seems less valid, and your need for empathy feels like an inconvenience to them. The dangerous part of this is how subtle it is. They don't outright dismiss your feelings, they just make them secondary. They interrupt conversations with stories that shift the focus. They escalate their own problems to make your concerns seem trivial, and they wear their suffering like a crown, as if enduring pain gives them priority over everyone else. Over time, you start questioning yourself. Am I overreacting? Is my pain too small? And that doubt is exactly what they want. By exaggerating their struggles, they create an emotional hierarchy where your experiences are always under scrutiny, always minimized, and always secondary to theirs. It's emotionally exhausting because it's hard to fight against someone who seems to be suffering so loudly and convincingly. And while you're busy navigating their dramatics, they maintain a subtle control over your empathy, your attention, and your energy. They've trained you to accommodate their emotions at the expense of your own, making you doubt the legitimacy of your feelings and delaying your ability to heal or stand strong. Once you recognize this pattern, the clarity hits hard. The exaggeration was never about reality, it was about control. Their pain wasn't a call for help. It was a tool to overshadow yours and keep you in a reactive, self-doubting state. Protecting yourself means stepping back, refusing to compete for emotional validity, and cutting off access to anyone who weaponizes their struggles to diminish yours. Your pain deserves space, acknowledgement, and respect, and if they can't offer that, they have no place in your life. Number 11. They used your loyalty as a shield to hide their disloyalty. Some people don't just betray, they rely on your trust and loyalty to cover their tracks. They know you show up, you stay consistent, and you give people the benefit of the doubt. So they use that as a safety net. Your loyalty becomes a shield that protects their misbehavior, allowing them to act however they want without fear of exposure or consequence. While you're investing time, energy, and trust into the relationship, they are quietly taking advantage, knowing that your consistency will mask their inconsistency. Your faithfulness makes them feel safe to disappear, lie, or manipulate, because they know you'll always be the one bridging the gaps they create. This type of betrayal is insidious because it's almost invisible at first. You think they're reliable, you think the connection is mutual, but the pattern emerges slowly, and by the time you notice it, they've already relied on your dedication to cover multiple acts of disloyalty. They may miss promises, break agreements, or act selfishly, yet somehow you're the one who ends up explaining, excusing, or forgiving their behavior. Your loyalty makes them bold because it guarantees that someone is holding the pieces together while they operate without accountability. What makes this worse is that they often project an image of trustworthiness to others, using your loyalty as proof of their character. To anyone watching, it looks like they're dependable, caring, and committed, while in reality, your commitment is the glue holding up their facade. The irony is that your dedication, the very thing that shows your integrity, becomes the tool they use to shield their lack of it. Recognizing this pattern is liberating because it shows you the truth. They never valued your loyalty. They exploited it. Understanding this allows you to reclaim your energy, redefine your boundaries, and step away without hesitation. Loyalty is not meant to be a prop for someone else's deception. The moment you see that they relied on your faithfulness to hide their dishonesty, the only rational choice is to remove them from your life completely. Protecting yourself and your integrity becomes the priority, because no one deserves to be the cover-up for someone else's betrayal. Number 12. They pretended to misunderstand you because playing confused gave them power. Some people don't misunderstand you by accident. They do it on purpose, and it's one of the quietest, most effective ways to gain control. When they pretend not to get it, they create confusion, frustration, and doubt. They twist your words, act as if your expectations are unreasonable, and make you question whether you're communicating clearly. Every time you try to assert yourself, they respond with feigned ignorance, and suddenly your confidence wavers. They don't need to attack directly. They simply make you feel unheard, misunderstood, and slightly off balance. And that subtle shift is where their power lies. The manipulation is almost invisible because it feels like a communication problem, not a deliberate strategy. You start replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you expressed yourself poorly or if maybe you overreacted. Meanwhile, they're keeping a running tally of how much they can push before you push back, learning which tactics create the most confusion and which moments leave you vulnerable. Every conversation becomes a chess game, with them calculating how their misunderstanding can control your emotions, responses, and energy without ever appearing confrontational. This tactic is especially dangerous because it erodes your trust in yourself. Over time, you start questioning your clarity, your intentions, and even your perception of reality. You might apologize for things you never did wrong, or soften your stance just to make the interaction smoother. And all the while, they maintain a sense of superiority and control, because confusion keeps you tethered to them. Your energy is drained, your confidence chipped away, and your voice is subtly silenced without them ever having to raise it. Recognizing this pattern is like lifting a veil. When you see that their confusion was never genuine, you realize that they were not struggling to understand. They were strategically holding you back. The only way to reclaim your power is to remove them from your space entirely. You stop doubting yourself, stop justifying their behavior, and stop allowing your clarity to be used against you. Understanding their tactic gives you freedom and control over your own mind and emotions again. Number 13. They collected your secrets like currency for a betrayal they were already planning. Some people don't just listen when you confide in them. They harvest your vulnerabilities like they're valuable assets. Every secret you trusted them with, every hesitation you shared, every confession meant to be safe, becomes something they store, study, and file away for later use. They aren't building closeness or trust. They're building leverage. They understand that the more you reveal, the more control they could have if they ever decided to turn those truths against you. Your confidence becomes a weapon in their hands, and they treat it with the precision of someone counting money, not the care of someone who values intimacy. The manipulation is deeply calculated. They don't spill your secrets immediately because timing is everything. They wait for the moment when sharing your vulnerabilities will hurt the most, when it will benefit them, or when it will shift attention away from their own faults. Your trust becomes the currency for a betrayal they've been plotting silently, sometimes for months or years. While you believed they were protecting your honesty, they were building a strategy. Every laugh, every comforting word, every promise to keep things between us is a facade covering a future act of exploitation. What makes this so insidious is how invisible it can feel at first. They appear loyal, caring, and supportive, while quietly preparing for a moment when they can gain from your openness. They may act shocked or offended when confronted, but the truth is that your secrets were never sacred. They were resources. By the time you realize the depth of the betrayal, they've already achieved the exact effect they wanted. Your trust has been weaponized, and your vulnerability has been used against you. Recognizing this pattern is painful, but empowering. The clarity allows you to see that your openness was never a mistake. Trusting someone who intended to exploit it was a lesson in discernment. Once you understand this, there's no reason to linger in their orbit. Protecting yourself means cutting them off entirely, reclaiming your secrets, and understanding that trust is a gift to be given carefully. Anyone who uses it as currency has no place in your life. Number 14. They hoped you'd stay hurt long enough to depend on them. Some people don't just hurt you once. They rely on your pain to keep you within reach. They understand that a wounded heart, a shaken confidence, or a lingering sense of self-doubt makes you more pliable, more controllable, and more likely to cling to the familiarity of someone who has caused harm. Your recovery threatens them because it removes the power they hold over your emotions. The longer you remain vulnerable, the longer they remain relevant in your life. Your hurt is their tool, your dependency their strategy, and your trust, the trust you gave even after being wounded, is the ultimate prize they manipulate to their advantage. This behavior is cunning because it hides behind acts of care. They may offer support, a shoulder to lean on, or words of comfort, but these gestures are not about helping you heal. They are about keeping you tethered. Every act of reassurance, every message of encouragement is a calculated reminder that they're still there, still available, still central to your emotional landscape. They don't want you to grow strong or independent. They want you to stay just weak enough to need them, just uncertain enough to seek validation from the very person who hurt you. Over time, this creates a cycle where you're constantly giving, forgiving, and relying on someone who has no genuine interest in your well-being. Your moments of strength are met with subtle resistance or indifference, and your attempts to step out of their influence are met with pressure, guilt, or manipulation. They benefit from your stagnation while masking it as support. Recognizing this truth is liberating because it flips the script. Once you see that their care was conditional and calculated, that your suffering was their strategy, you no longer need to justify, negotiate, or hope for genuine concern. Cutting them off becomes not an act of cruelty, but of self-preservation. Your peace, growth, and independence cannot coexist with someone who feeds on your pain. The moment you remove them, you reclaim your power, your freedom, and the understanding that no one deserves to remain in your life simply because they benefit from your wounds. The truth is harsh, but it's the kind of clarity that sets you free. Every one of these points reveals a reality most people don't want to see. Some people never truly care about your heart, your growth, or your peace. They care only about what they can take, control, or manipulate. They study your weaknesses like a manual, exploit your kindness, exaggerate their struggles, and collect your secrets, not out of loyalty, but out of a calculated plan to benefit from your vulnerability. They only love the version of you they can control, celebrate your confusion, and protect their image at the cost of your feelings. These are not isolated incidents. They form a pattern, a deliberate strategy designed to keep you tethered, self-doubting, and dependent on people who have no genuine interest in your well-being. Once you see it clearly, the power shifts back to you. Recognizing these behaviors isn't about harboring bitterness. It's about protecting yourself, reclaiming your energy, and understanding that your peace, growth, and self-respect are non-negotiable. You don't need anyone in your life who thrives on your uncertainty, exploits your loyalty, or relies on your pain to feel relevant. The moment you identify the patterns, the only logical action is to remove these toxic influences completely. It's not revenge, it's liberation. It's refusing to let someone else dictate the rhythm of your life, your emotions, or your decisions. You reclaim your boundaries, your voice, and your clarity. You stop giving power to those who never deserved it. Your life is too valuable to allow manipulation, deceit, and hidden agendas to live rent-free in your space. You have every right to cut ties, block them everywhere, and move forward without looking back. Freedom starts with recognizing the truth and acting decisively. Your energy is sacred, and you owe it to yourself to protect it fiercely. If this message resonated with you, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss content that strengthens your mind, heart, and spirit. Don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts, and share it with anyone who needs this clarity. Every action you take here helps you and others reclaim the power you deserve. Your peace is priceless. Treat it that way. God bless you.